Alright, welcome to Ctrl+ART+Delete, episode 3. We're going to be talking again about tools of the trade, part 2. Last week we covered more of the traditional oil medium and the canvases and the brushes. And this week we have some more alternative things going on. Ken Yarus will be working on gouache, which I don't really even know what it is, so I'm excited to learn. Richie Carter is working with some mediums on his oils, so to achieve some more softer colors, depth, atmospheric effects, right?
Yep, a little atmosphere.
And Verardo also works in some of that, but has nothing to demonstrate this time.
Say hi, Lauren.
Hi. And I will be looking a bit at my water media dye on silk, and not demonstrating, but showing it some of the tools of the trade for that. And as always, we have Dan Williams here with his artistic mic recording.
Hi.
And we're in yet a different setup of mics. So
trying things out.
Alternative recording media. Cool. So, how's everybody's weekend and things? How are people feeling?
Great. Just a little wild.
And dire need of coffee still,
Yeah,
but
drinking coffee. Richie
Wild,
was at
wild.
a wedding.
I was at a wedding just in St. Louis for a few days.
and you gave a painting as a gift, which
Oh,
is
yeah,
a
yeah.
classic artist.
Ah, nice.
That's the
Prank.
too. You gotta do that.
Yep. I think they appreciate it.
I don't like it.
I did that. Avis and I painted a painting of the brewery with an X-Wing and a stormtrooper in it for a friend of ours, a Star Wars
bet
fan.
they loved it.
I think they liked it. We should have gone bigger with it. It was only like an 8x10.
Should have been a Y-wing.
Right. Deep Star Wars references. No, I think they liked X-Wing, and the number on it was the date of their wedding, like the serial number of the
Nice.
X-Wing. Yeah, I wish I had
That's
it
pretty
with
cool.
me.
Yeah.
Photo or
that's-
something. I forgot to take photos. Well, while you guys are, I guess, setting up your little
working on it.
pieces, I can just talk a little bit about dye on silk. That works.
Do it.
So I've been working on dye on silk for about 15 years. My mom discovered it when she was in Hawaii one time, taking a painting class. It originates from Asia, specifically China. I believe the ruling classes. It was kind of came out of calligraphy, and many of the paintings that they did several thousand years ago still exist today. Whichever ones survived the Mongols and everything else. The looting. What?
The people that gave up. From the Mongols. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a bloody story.
By the way, hardcore history, the Wrath of the Khans by
just
Dan
listen to
Carlin.
that. So good.
Highly recommended. If you have any interest in history, even if you don't have interest in history, he makes it still interesting.
That's pretty deep, yeah.
But those assholes burned a lot of really nice art in their conquests, so a lot of it didn't survive. But what did remain is archival, and because you're putting this dye on the silk and it soaks in and it's very archival and lasts a long time. So I'll just show the camera what it looks like to kind of start. Sorry, boys, to block you, but stretch a piece of silk. This is called crepe de chine silk. There are other types. Habotai is another type that's a little sheerer, thinner. Colors come out more vibrant. This kind of silk acts a little bit more like watercolor paper. Things don't absorb quite as quickly, but a lot of silk painting is just controlling the flow of the dye. And when you put dye on the silk, it behaves a lot like when you do wet on wet watercolor painting. So when you lay down pigment on a wet piece of watercolor paper, it spreads out and basically reaching the edges of what you've wet. With silk, it always behaves like that, whether it's dry or wet. So it spreads out. And so you have to use different techniques to control where the dye goes. And this is unfinished. I don't even know if it's salvageable, but it's still an example of a piece in progress. To use what we use to control the spread is this stuff called Gouda Resist, which comes in a, I use it in a bottle like this, a little nib. Essentially, you're drawing the lines that you need to preserve the barriers with this little nib, and then the dye cannot spread past that. And actually, yep, you gotta have barriers to control. And I actually have this big white piece of silk, so I could at least demonstrate how the dye flows. If I can get some water.
Yeah, I got a little
Splash of water. I'll just take it.
That's what you need.
Yeah.
Little dab will do you.
Dabby dabby do.
Little dabby do.
Thanks. So I think I've got some digital and magenta color here. And put it on there. And you can see it spreads a bit. I think that's a really beautiful color.
I like it.
That's cool.
So, art created. Boom. Delete.
Delete.
That's the best advantage of Photoshop is there's the undo feature.
So maybe it's cheating. Some.
You can save like 20 different versions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't go back on anything I'm doing right now. If it's wrong, it's gonna be wrong.
It's kind of the exciting thing about real painting.
Yeah.
It's handy to be able to like undo, but it's like the it's do or die when you're painting, I think.
Yeah.
Really.
Which I think gives it more
Especially
value.
with watercolor
Definitely.
or diamond.
Yeah. In water media in general, you can't go back. So you paint light to dark as order instead of with oil. You tend to paint dark to light. And what are you working on, Ken? You doing some dead flowers?
Yep, in spirit of Valentine's Day, which was just yesterday, I got flowers from last week. I actually painted, similar to how Richie made his wedding gifts, I made a lot of Valentine cards and handed them out. So I have these roses left over and I'm going to try to reuse them
Nice.
in one fashion or other. And gouache is something new to me. We get water media, I usually use oil. So trying to play with this is really kind of tricky to me. Gouache is an interesting in its difference from watercolor because it's opaque innately. It uses like a gum arabic binding, and they used to use it way back in medieval days. Apparently, they were making it over the tempera painting. They would use it on top of that. So that's the history of some of the gouache stuff, and I just started noticing it more the last couple of years. People using it. An illustrator friend of mine talked about it when I was growing up some, and talked about how versatile it was because it dried so quick but still had the opacity. And I'm just trying to play with it because I've seen some really amazing work come out of it, and if I can figure out how to do that, I'd be really pleased. So we'll see if I can pull anything out of this.
And you said tempura. Is that tempura? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
the
sorry.
egg based?
Yeah, it was the
tempura
egg-based.
shrimp is.
Yeah, I was thinking. It's like,
They're very
Yeah,
similar.
wrong word.
I've always been confused by the similarity between those terms, but I think tempura is like an egg wash kind of thing,
Yeah,
like an egg medium.
yeah, and I don't even really know that much about that style because it's pretty uncommon now. Like, I think there are artists that will still practice with it, but it's not nearly as common as the more traditional mediums right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, dye on silk is definitely very untraditional. I don't know any other artists who are doing it with as much success as my mom, Nancy Cawdrey, has done it. And she's kind of found a niche in the Western art market for it because it's very vibrant and transparent. And you can see a little better example of using the Gouda and things. When you're finished on the stretcher bars, when you've done the wettest of the work, sort of, you can stretch it on a piece of foam core, and you can see the barriers that were put in with the Gouda. This is Gouda resist. It just sort of, it acts as a wall that stops water. You kind of have to put it on and then let it dry and soak in for it to be most effective. It also comes in gold and black. It's often regarded as more of a crafty, a craft rather than a fine art. I believe my mom elevates it to a fine art, but I'm biased certainly, and I understand the limitations. But as far as how archival it is and the history behind it is pretty interesting. After it migrated to Russia, when the Chinese and the Russian aristocracy had a strong relationship, I think in the late 1800s, kind of the czars, they learned, the royal family of the Russians learned how to do the art, and when they were then kicked out of Russia in the Bolshevik Revolution, they fled and took it to Paris, and that's kind of where it was introduced to the West. And then from there it spread. And
I was
it's
kind
really
of wondering how it got to the West. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And I mean, imagine the Silk Road had some, but yeah, I don't think it caught on until the Russians brought it to Paris, kind of. And I don't really know any famous people who've done it in the past. I don't. But it's a lot of fun, and it's non-toxic, which is nice. There are nothing will give you a headache or anything.
Well, that's perfect because I got plenty of that right here.
Yeah, balance it out. Basically, a couple of the tools of the trade. I use some silk tacks, little 3-prong tacks to attach the silk to the stretcher bars. Salt is really fun to use on silk. If you put it on the die, put down the die, and then you place the salt on it while it's still wet. It gives sort of both attracts and opposes the dye, makes it spread out. I put the little dark dots in, but all that white around, or that lighter spots around it. So basically it gives you texture very quickly and easily. Nice for rocks and things. This is one of the dye bottles. It's strong stuff, gets everywhere, gets all over the hands, but I don't believe it's toxic. It's all water soluble. And then I just use Artisan Santa Fe watercolor brushes. These are also Raphael watercolor brushes. A lot of the same materials carry over. And then I'd use basically white plates to mix dye. And like all water media, it really lends itself to water, painting water, and and painting sky. Yeah, I guess that's how a bit obvious.
Paint with water, my friends. Neat.
And then for the most alternative media that I've ever used is emu egg here.
What?
Yeah, and I did a little bas relief, or I don't know what it's called when it's reductive. So
Whoa, that's awesome.
it's
That's crazy.
yeah, emu eggs are cool. They have like 3 or 4 different layers of color. I was only able to get to the first kind of layer through scratching it off.
Wow.
Oh, it's scratched it.
Yep. So I used pretty much just a X-Acto knife. It could have been like a box cutter. I wish I had something.
Oh yeah.
Did you eat the egg?
No, they were blown out through the bottom. It was part of a little Easter egg painting course that my mom and I taught in at Triple Creek Ranch down in Darby, Montana. And we had some fun results. We painted duck eggs, chicken eggs. No chicken eggs. Duck eggs, emu eggs. Duck eggs are really thick, kind of thick-shelled, a little bigger than a chicken egg. And then, of course, the emu eggs are huge and beautiful green, kind of jadey color.
Nice.
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out what to do with the bottom of it because, like, I don't know what owl's bottoms look like.
Lower bottoms.
Because it's just like a big feathery mass. So what is gouache?
Well, it's pigment, and what makes it opaque, I'm not really sure. I need to do more research onto it. But like I said, it's a water-based medium that has been around for about 600 years, and or at least that's when they've been like following it more. It's from Italy originally, and I don't know a lot of the cool history like you do. I need to. I guess it's a new medium to me. Ultimately, I don't know that much about it. I don't even really understand how it works. Like with traditional watercolor, you would build the lights first and then add the darks to it. And I don't know if that's how it works with gouache. I've been painting it more like watercolor, where I do more of my light tones. I'm adding in darks now, but I'm still experimenting with how it goes together because it really doesn't. It's not quite as water soluble as watercolor. Like if I want to loosen up a particular area, if I just mix in some water and try to knock it down, it still stays pretty intact. Like that's still, you can still see a lot of the line structure and everything else going on, whereas watercolor might have completely dissolved out of that. So I've noticed this is harder.
You were almost able to pick it up there.
Yeah, you can move it some, but like this big dark line, it's like it's gonna stay there. I can soften things, which is kind of a fun thing to play with.
Yeah.
But a lot of these darks, once they're in there, and the lights are kind of a funny thing because they're so opaque that you could add more light to them, but then they just become more pasty looking. So I'm trying to figure out how to really judge like the overall tone structure, and I don't want to rely too much on the white because I can mix it without it most of the time. So it's kind of a tricky medium, but I've seen some really amazing results from. There's a guy named Mike Hernandez who does them. He actually works for I think Pixar primarily, but he posts these plein air paintings he does in gouache. It seems like every day, and every single one of them is mind blowing. Like I haven't seen one that was a letdown at all. They were always really, really inspiring to see. And my hope is to this summer when I'm out plein air painting and backpacking in places like Glacier Park, carrying the huge heavy oil painting kit around, which mine weighs in somewhere close to 30 pounds. This alternately is maybe 4 or 5 pounds, so I'd be able to take it more on like extended trips to places that I usually wouldn't be able to get to with oil paint.
Do the study and then bring it back for.
Yeah, and I want to be accurate enough with the paint now. It's a part of why I wanted to spend some time today doing some study with it, because if I can get accurate in the studio, then hopefully I'll be accurate working plein air, and then it'll be better for my purposes. But we'll see. It's definitely a change of pace for me.
Speaking of studio work, this is a piece Ken was working on last podcast, and here it is now. It's kind of interesting to see the progression, but it's unfinished.
It's still it's got a long way to go. I'm not psyched about it yet, but that's usually how studio paintings go.
Yeah, I know.
It's a part of the fun of working plein air painting is that you don't get a choice to decide if it's done or not. It just gets dark or the light changes so much that you have to stop. And with studio paintings, you have pretty much an unlimited amount of time to fight it, and I really don't like that aspect about it. But right now, I think I need to spend some time resting, letting it rest, and deciding where I want to go with it next. Yep. But the bones are there. I think because I did the color studies and I did the color swatches, everything else makes it easy to block something in. But finishing a painting is still always tricky.
Yeah.
I like that orange stripe in the background.
Yeah.
Feel.
Thank you. I'm hoping to play up that purple-orange
Yeah.
color combo right there, and we'll see. I don't like the drawing in the cloud yet. I feel like it looks really rigid and it doesn't have enough structure to be designed and enough fluidity to be abstracted, I guess, or like fluid. It just looks kind of like a giant chunk in the sky, and I gotta change that. But I don't know how yet. So if you guys have any input, let me know.
Yeah. Well, some styles allow that for that kind of.
Got this like slashing kind of.
Yeah, I want it to be
Strokes.
slightly stylized and structural, but right now it just seems like a giant puzzle piece, and I want it to be more I want it to have more volume.
Luminous.
Yeah, I don't know how to use that. Yeah, you got it.
Voluminous. Voluminous.
So hopefully that can be pulled through and you guys can see it sometime where it's not looking so bad. But
It's not so bad.
You throw it up on your Insta?
No, I haven't yet. The study is up
What'd you
there,
do?
but the which I maybe have to stop doing because I put up putting a study up being like this is a new one, big one's gonna come up, and then the study's so much better than the big one that it's
It seems like that always happens.
yeah.
I
Should've
just
never
look
posted
into
it.
Studies.
Yeah,
Don't do studies.
It jinxes me.
right. It's like the initial creative juices
How is it working with
was more concentrated.
Glossed over.
silk? Do you have to have a pretty consistent workflow, or do you change your approach a lot of the
Pretty
time?
consistent, yeah. I have to do a drawing, and then on paper usually, because you can't really draw on silk. It's too spongy,
Mm-hmm.
too much give to it, and then transfer the drawing. The nice thing is the transparency of the silk allows me to just put a drawing underneath it, usually sharpied over, so I have darker lines, and then I can just trace it essentially onto the silk.
Oh, nice.
Another way to do that is to just draw on the silk with paint, with dye, and it's best to lay in actually all the lines that you're going to cover with the Gouda. Otherwise, you get all these unsightly white lines of the Gouda resist.
That's no Gouda.
No Gouda. Yes. It's not spelled like the cheese, by the way. It's Gutta. I think it's German, but it's made out of a rubber tree plant from South America, I believe.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of like Frisket for watercolor. Similar concept. And then then I lay it, once the color, there's some underneath colors. You can put on the Gouda resist, and then usually kind of work background to foreground. Big shapes to little shapes. And then apply salt while the dye is still wet. If you want salt, that effect, I generally do.
What does the salt do exactly?
It repels and attracts the surrounding dye.
Okay.
It just kind of makes a little dot of texture, but it's really, what's fun about it is it's completely unpredictable what it's going to do every time.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit different every time based on, I think, the temperature, the ambient temperature, I don't know what kind of what kind of dye you're using. Like the yellows tend to react a lot more with the salt than other pigments, other dyes, and so it's fun to let kind of just do like a big, water space, water shape, and then put the salt on and leave it alone for 20-30 minutes and see what happened. And it doesn't always go well, but usually does.
So I think that's super interesting with water mediums, especially with the silk and then watercolor. You have to play to the strengths of that medium. If you try to control it, you're gonna probably be frustrated.
Yep. But don't you think that applies to oil as
Oh
well?
yeah, definitely. I think,
Oil, I think just you have so much more control. It's so much harder to have that spontaneity with it. There's people with oil, they use all kinds of crazy brushes and just Brent Cotton paints a lot with a paper towel. I've seen, like, when I watched him paint, he was like, he'll use his paper towel to create textures and that a brush wouldn't be able to do because it really is so much more control. And I don't like that about oil sometimes. I feel like it's part of what's wrong with that painting is there's not enough element to it that's exciting.
Right.
It looks like everything is very controlled.
Yeah.
And that's not
Well, so that's
good.
for a cloud in silk. You have about 5 minutes to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
No matter the size, pretty much, because if it dries
really.
while you're working on it, it starts to dry in these lines. Like it gets lines, basically, like the edge of where it spreads.
Yeah.
So you have to keep it wet, essentially, and you have to be very purposeful with what strokes you're making, and how, and it might just go to shit, or it might turn out really well.
Oh,
You never kinda
Name
know.
the podcast that. Purposeful Strokes. Dang.
Yeah, I love purposeful strokes.
None of these willy-nilly strokes.
Is there a pun in that though? Like,
Yeah,
we have to have a
You
pun.
call me Willie. Oh, in the title?
yeah, purposeful strokes. It's like different strokes for different folks.
Different purposeful strokes for purposeful blokes and some blokettes.
Only one blokeette.
Blokettes, that's a band name right there. See, we're just coming. This is the podcast where we're just coming up with titles for stuff. The title is called Titles.
Yeah, titles.
That's a different one. That's a different one. Different podcast.
That's confusing.
Yeah, but if you're in it, you get it. You know? Like, what is this? Anyway.
Well, I already set up the Facebook page and stuff, so
Oh, yeah.
It's too late.
I could change it. I could change it. Purposeful strokes.
Another one.
But yeah, nothing's online yet.
That could be a golf podcast. We just need to get into golfing now. Just anything with strokes.
Pretty much.
Rowing, keyboarding. Like us, you know.
How many strokes per minute?
You know, post-stroke people and see how their lives are and check in with them. Yeah, if you guys want to talk about painting still, that's cool.
Yes, I do.
I used to paint a lot on,
Do it!
on Mylar. Have you heard of that?
Oh, like plastic?
Yeah, it's like a thick plastic sheet,
Yeah.
and it.
When I think of Mylar, I think of Mylar balloons, so I think of like
No.
a thin, I guess.
Yeah,
But
like in a kitchen, like in a restaurant kitchen, it's just
No.
like plastic though.
Yeah, it's really cool because the way it takes water media, because it doesn't soak into the.
oh, so you're
Material?
spreading it around? Oh.
Yeah, it just like sits on top, and then when the water evaporates, the pigment like swirls around and mixes, and it ends
Huh.
up drying a lot different than
Right,
how you put it on. It's really cool.
which is
And
seems
then
to be
when
the
you-
rule of
yeah.
water media in general. But
And then when you put it up to the light, because it's transparent, it looks completely different because there's different opacities of the like,
Huh.
pigment.
wow,
So you're supposed to put
Is
it up
it
to
clear?
light.
Yeah, well, I did.
is it clear plastic?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, it's kind of like a film.
Semi-opaque.
Yeah.
So by putting some light behind it, that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
that's
really
cool.
I wish I brought something.
a friend of mine, Cameron Clayton, another up and coming artist in the valley, who will have on the podcast at some point. He's been working in silk, and he's been experimenting with putting LED lights behind the silk and kind of trying to take advantage of the transparency of the silk in that way.
Crazy.
And it does. It turns out pretty interesting. He did a really cool wide, like I think it's 6 foot by 1 foot, or 6 foot by 18 inches tall landscape of Flathead Lake, and it reads well. It reads beautifully, and then you flip on the light behind it in sort of a darker space. And
I
has- no, it's okay.
Oh, I wanted to start to try it with oil, so I got some. I put transparent gesso on it, and I taped it to my window. Oh, sorry, I taped it to my window, so I haven't started it yet, but I want to try the oil.
And did it show through? Was it, or did we
No, I just
gesso?
started it.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, bring it in next time. I'd like to see it. I'm curious.
I've seen people do like plexiglass
Mhm.
stuff. That's neat.
I've seen that.
I like the idea of using light
Yeah.
as a presentation tool. I mean, it takes a little more like setup for your display if you're trying to like
Yeah.
show it
Yeah.
off. You can't just put
That
it on the
wasn't
wall and be
problem
done.
looking.
But
Right.
like at a show, I can see
Nowhere
that.
to show it.
Well, Cameron has built. He's a very handy person. He's built like a whole wall. Basically, built a false wall so that he could plug in
Yeah.
the painting. So yeah, it's sort of a limited application. You can't put it anywhere, and he has a lot of work to do to install it in someone's house. But he has sold, I know, at least one. So
Crazy.
yeah,
Is it hard to show in a gallery then? I mean, or is that
it would
almost
have to be
impossible?
the right. It
Yeah.
would have to be the right space and the right gallery. Yeah.
A little more setup.
Installation.
Yeah, it is almost like installation art then.
Yeah.
Cool.
But the lighting goes with it, I guess, is an advantage. You don't have to. We have some nice little pieces in our house, and no appropriate lighting for it.
But you
We
could
need some track lighting.
take like, I'm just thinking like use the plexiglass paintings and like fit them together like a cube or something. I might put a light inside of it.
That'd be cool.
3D.
Think
That's
about
an
that.
idea.
Think about that.
Okay, go for it, man.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of manufacturing.
I know. I'm interested in like
Fabrication.
doing sculpture at some point. So
Yeah.
just kind of like messing around, see what I can do using light.
Sculpture. Have any of you guys done any sculpture?
I had to do it at the GCA, but not as art, just to study, just as for form. It's not really to like create, just to study form, unfortunately.
And you did human figures, or?
Well, we did mostly just casts, and then you could choose then to like specify more for painting, or you could do more sculpture at that point. So I worked more into the painting aspect of things, but that's why I did those cast paintings, or ended up doing those. But other people will do more in-depth life sculpture and things like that. They do really great work, but it was definitely like a different route you had to kind of choose between, which I never did. But yeah, ultimately it was for sculpting the figure. Got to go to some really cool art studios in New York where they're doing monuments basically, and real like big wig commissions for portraits and things like that still happen. It's not as common like it used to be, but definitely still happening.
Richie, what are you working on right now?
Well, I am working on a piece that has been sitting. It's a little study, so I'm actually, like we said, don't ever do a study, but I'm doing one right now. Just trying to get a little warmed up and with some kind of glazing.
Can you explain glazing?
I'll explain, yes, as best as I know on kind of what I'm doing, what method I'm doing. There's a few different reasons for glazing, but essentially you're mixing a medium in with the paint. And the medium that I'm using is pretty basic, so it's Damar varnish, turpentine, like traditional turpentine, and linseed oil.
Huh.
So there's...
Did you prepare that mixture?
Yeah, I prepared it. It's a ratio of 3 parts turpentine, 2 parts linseed oil, and then 1 part Damar varnish. And it's just a kind of gooey, transparent, it's almost like honey. It kind of looks like honey as well.
Huh.
And so what I will use, the way is that I will use it, sometimes if I'm working on a painting and it's dried in between, they call it oiling out, where you put a thin layer of that oil. It could be also just straight linseed oil. And I think that's traditionally how it's done. And then that kind of creates a surface that will accept the paint again and will kind of soften the edges, because if you can imagine putting a stroke of paint on a dry painting, it's going to really stand out.
Mm-hmm.
So oiling out whatever part you're working on, you can put a thin coat of that oil on and kind of work that area back into the painting.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm doing with it is I'm trying to get transparent paint over the top of already painted surfaces, so that you're going to actually see, there's going to be a different effect. So you're going to be seeing through the transparent layers down to the surface, or the foundational layers of the painting. And for me, what that's doing visually is kind of creating a little more atmosphere and haziness in this piece. This one is actually a scene that when we had wildfires, so
Yeah.
a lot of smoke
last
in the
summer.
air. And so I'm just been kind of experimenting how to get the most, really how to capture that quality of light, because when that's happening, there's so many particles in the air, and the light's actually bouncing off every single one, so there's this glow that happens, and that's kind of what I'm striving for.
Shooting for.
Yeah.
Cool. Where's that photo taken? Do you know?
Yeah, this is so this one that I'm working on. It's out on, I think it's called Holt Stage Road. It's this big long road that stretches out east of the valley, kind of towards Creston.
Yeah, just exploring that area.
It's really
It's fun.
it's nice, yeah. But I mean, with all the smoke, you can't really. It could be really anywhere, because the mountains around here get all covered up. But
Yeah.
a lot of people paint this way. That kind of is, toneless painters, you might call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to use it for times when I actually observe that toneless quality happening. So I don't necessarily push all my paintings to that stage, but when
it's smoky.
when it's happening, or when I can see it, or foggy or whatever, I try to, because I like to work on plein air. So this is actually done from just a small value sketch. I never even got a photo from it. And this will be, it's kind of practice for the piece I was working on last week, because I'm going to be doing much of the same stuff. So right now I'm working in the sky, and what I've done is mixed up a pile of paint that's really similar to this kind of light. It's so neutral. It's kind of purple, bluish, gray, and then from that pile, I'm just shifting the temperatures a little towards the green and towards the violets, towards the yellow, just slightly. It doesn't take much to make it read as actual different color, but if I keep the value very, very close and then shift those temperatures, it's going to create this kind of shimmering effect. It's starting to happen now, but it takes a little while, and it's very slow, kind of subtle moving at this point. So it's not like I put one stroke in here and makes all the, it's not like an aha moment in one stroke, but just kind of building up that layering. So
instead of just sweeping across the whole sky with like a big brush.
Yeah, and that's essentially what I did when I first,
when you oiled it.
when I put the under the painting, and I almost completed it. I completed to a certain extent, but the sky was pretty much just one kind of a few brush strokes that just laid in the general color. And I'm just adding a little more interest, because especially when you work big, which is what I do with a lot of these little studies, I start small, get everything figured out, and then I go onto a big surface, and then all of a sudden you have this giant area that you have to fill and make it interesting. So if I'm just painting with this little area, I can do one stroke and it fills the whole thing, but when I go to the big canvas, I do one stroke and it only fills a tiny bit. So how do you make that interesting? And this is a way that I've been working to solve that problem for me.
Cool. Ken, I noticed you were using a mirror.
Oh yeah.
Another tool of the trade.
It is a tool of the trade. It's more of a crutch of the trade for me.
And you look fine.
Yeah, it's
Don't worry about it.
It's a habit I kind of got into in school. They stressed it a lot when you're working with figures or portrait, things that basically drawing is essential. You can pick up on it. Your eye is kind of programmed in your brain to make things simplified. It makes things symmetrical, and it will kind of see what you want it to see. So if you're like, oh, this portrait looks just like them, it probably doesn't. It's actually your brain recognizing what they look like, and then when it looks at your drawing, it'll pick onto things that probably are right, but you're missing other important things. And it's a pretty common phenomenon that you can go online and look up those little visual tricks where like it's two separate colors that look like the same color and different values when they're on separate sides of each other are actually the same. Or so you have to really kind of keep a one up on your brain.
Yeah.
And the mirror sort of helps with that. It will flip the image, so you just use it to look in one side, and it flips it around, and so some of that can start your brain out of kind of stagnant looking. But I got to the point where I was like using it often enough that it was kind of like my cue to ask a question or like challenge myself. So if I'm now where I could just sit here and say, hey, does this rose look better? I would do it so often with my mirror that now if I'm ever looking at something and trying to make a judgment, I'll use my mirror instead. And it's just a mental habit, really. And now I don't even know if I ask myself good questions anymore. I just look in the mirror like it's doing something, and it usually isn't.
I'm gonna hide that from you.
Yeah, it's not a superpower. And when I don't have it, I really feel confused. I don't have my mirror, so Richie better not take it. But it does help. It really does help with portraiture. You'll catch yourself big time with the mirror sometimes, especially if you do get really concise with your thoughts.
It's like the same principle that if I look in a mirror, I know what to expect, but then when I see the reverse image of my face, I look really weird.
Yeah, you look
my
my
nose goes the other way.
Oh yeah, right.
Painting.
Yeah, well, I think it. Well, no, like if I'm like in a double mirror kind of situation, where
Which is quite
see
frequently.
What?
Which is quite frequently you get a those double
Dressing room maybe.
Yeah.
or maybe on video, I guess, would be the non-flipped. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
they've
used to
actually
seeing
done
my face in
research
the
on that.
mirror, but really?
Yeah, it was like it was about seeing yourself in the mirror. You see it yourself backwards, and then
Right.
it was talking about how Superman, when he has his hair, he parts on one side when he's Clark Kent,
Right.
and when he turns Superman, it goes the other way. And they did research on like the structure of your face, of how one side's actually stronger, and depending on
What a disguise.
I thought it was like because if it's part from the left, it's because you're right-handed and like you pull your hair to the left, and right-handed people are better, stronger, and better leaders. It's a fact. John F. Kennedy, right-handed. List goes on.
Present day.
Well, I'm glad I'm right-handed.
Interesting. Our brain trickery is pretty interesting,
It is.
and how that is involved in making art is pretty interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
Or just our perceptions of everything. It's fun to be aware of that stuff, and you have to as an artist.
Yeah, you can use it to your advantage. A lot of the times it's just cool, but it's just trying to be aware of it, like you said, really.
What it means to me is that I look different to everyone than what I think I look like, basically. What I think I would see in the mirror is
It's true.
everybody else sees the opposite.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah.
So I think I'm progressively making this rose more and more terrible. But that's
That's the
kind of
good-
the problem with water media. Like oil paint, you really can bring back from the dead. You can literally scrape it off the canvas or terp it down, or you can do all these little tricks to save something. But at this point, I'm just stacking up poop on poop. And it's looking like that.
I don't think so. You actually, you capture the color almost perfectly, but
Well, that's good. That's a relief to hear. I'm trying to get, like, a lot of people said you mix gouache like oil, but a big confusion point for me is I mix with my palette knife, and you can't really do that with gouache. Like, that's really, I think of things as just like mathematical combinations. So I know I want this color, I scoop this much and this much, and there's no diluting it with water. Usually you're gonna have a pile of that paint. So I feel like that's a lie to say you mix this like oil paint, because I can't grab a dollop of this. Like, every time it's diluted with water, every time there's wildness added to it, just chaos theory constantly interrupting my brain. But I think,
Jeff Goldblum.
yeah, I think you can at least add oil or add white, which is you can't do with watercolor, right? I mean,
right.
there's no real white watercolor.
There's no going back to white. White is the color.
Just start.
White is the paper and basically nothing else. Although, pretty much it's.
So
You can
it's like an intermediate between watercolor and acrylic kind of.
right.
Yeah,
Seems like it,
yeah, and acrylic I've never used that much of either. I used some in high school and didn't really like it, so
Yeah.
I decided gouache was more of my thing back then, and then stopped using it in art school.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm taking it back up now, like I said, mostly for plein air painting purposes, but I just feel like it's a huge learning curve.
Acrylic's great for super detail. I think a lot of those like hyper realistic wildlife painters and things use acrylic.
Oh, because it dries so fast, right?
Yeah, it dries fast, easy to control. I think you're noodling, Ken.
I am starting to.
Use a big brush, like, get bold, man. Not trying to tell
You want the
how to paint,
ravioli,
but-
not the angel hair.
Yeah, that's true. I do hate overhead pasta.
Good,
It is
yeah.
my
Analogy.
Well, and that's, I'm used to also being able to take longer. Like traditionally,
Yeah.
I think watercolors, like it's dry, it's done. Like oil paint, you can really keep playing with for probably too long, or at least I do.
Right.
And this, it's a new thing. It's like, oh, you're done with the painting. When I was doing those cards last week, it was really like, well, another one done, another one done, another one done. So I'll probably just call this one because I am gonna noodle it to death. I gotta play with a little bit of the greens.
So you did hand painted Valentine's cards?
Oh yeah.
How'd it go over?
Success.
Mostly girls wondering why they got them.
Valentine's Day was yesterday.
Well, for me, it's just that they were the same girls that were whining about not having Valentine's, and so I felt like it was me being a real good guy to
Yeah.
just fill the gap, but I don't know anymore. It's just you just kind of gotta take it easy.
What you get for being a good guy, man.
Yeah, you get yelled at. High heels thrown at you. No, it was never. It was definitely not received poorly. It was just kind of, I think, very surprising. I didn't tell them it was just so I could have painting practice. That's really what it was all about. But
They'll hear that.
oh, my mom got one. She was real excited about it, my grandma and all that. But if I had to go buy real cards, I'm out money and painting experience. So this is a lot better deal.
From the heart.
Fart from the heart.
Work from the heart.
Yes. Gouache. I just like to say gouache.
Oh, gosh.
Like my favorite Spice Girls, gouache spice. Awesome. Married to David Gueckham.
You're reaching.
He plays Walker.
What?
Knew I'd get you with that one. Just say it with me. Gouache. 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 It's like, you know,
I'm
it's like a
curious.
mantra.
Curious what the origin is.
I'd say
It's
that-
Italian. I think it was like Wozo or something kind of different. They definitely adapted it, but
One of my,
some Wikipedia.
I think one of the most interesting mediums is fresco. When you have to, you're making the medium, and you have to
We're still
still on
still
gouache.
cracking up.
Dan used to crack us up with just a word
Anything.
in school. Yeah,
Okay.
Got kicked out of class.
Roy. I remember Roy could do it too. That's right.
A word.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roy and I we were like class clowns.
No way.
Yeah.
There's a few of us in Big Fork, but
Yeah. It was a clown
our
grade.
class is pretty goofy.
It was a solid class. It's much better than mine.
No, I remember there was like in newspaper class, someone wrote an article about how lame your class was. When people got upset. I don't remember how they like phrased it, but it was
Yeah.
like,
It happens, man. I mean, there are groups find each other. I don't know. Well, that's just age, but in my fraternity too. Like every odd year was great. Bunch of good guys. Every odd year graduation was good. Every even year was terrible.
I wonder if Kyle that wrote that. He would write something like
Yeah,
that.
he would.
Calvershek. Shout out.
Yeah. Well, now we're just talking about that. So let's return to the
In-depth
subject.
article about how crappy something is.
I don't think adding straight white is a good choice with gouache. It seems to just kill things.
Huh. Does it completely cover the pigment?
No, it doesn't completely cover either. So it's not as opaque. I mean, compared to watercolor, it makes a huge
Yeah.
difference.
Well, I
but
think you putting those darker stems in really helped pop it a little bit.
I was trying to. So,
It's pretty.
do they look dead? Should I make them look more dead?
They do look dead.
Yeah.
Is it depressing enough? So I'm gonna gray down the whole background a little bit more, so maybe the lights and the roses will stick
Yeah.
out a little bit. But again, use a big brush. Try not to make mistakes.
Like a Beauty and the Beast thing going on.
Yeah.
The dead wilting roses. Was
Yeah.
that something that happened?
Yeah, that's when it's dead, then you have no more time to lift the curse.
Alright. So how do you define dead?
The last pedal. The last pedal
pedal
drops.
falls.
Remember, super dramatic. You don't remember that? The one like
It's been a while.
an award for CGI.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Like that was the
Oh,
first
the
cartoon
first.
that ever used computer
Oh,
graphics, and it was when they were dancing in the ballroom, like in the background. Just the room was 3D and the
Oh,
swirling
right,
camera.
right.
Oh, I remember that now a little bit.
Everyone's like, "Whoa!"
But it was primarily hand drawn, you
Yeah.
think? Yeah.
And then Aladdin came out with like the lava, and then everyone freaked out even more. And then Jurassic Park came out, and everyone
Well,
just
everybody's still freaking out about it.
yeah.
Well, Jurassic Park was still mostly puppets, wasn't
yeah,
it?
puppetry.
Yeah, it was a combo.
Oh, that's right. I remember like the dinosaurs running. I saw that in like the CGI breakdown for it, or it was before it was that.
Well, they animated the dinosaurs and the models were motion captured, so it was computer graphics of animation. So that's why it kind of had more of a realistic look than straight up like the computer animated
Right.
guys didn't really know.
Like Sci-Fi
Animation.
Channel, Sharknado kind of stuff.
Right. Like, cause it was such a new medium, computer animation, that the computer guys they weren't really necessarily all very artistic.
Right.
So I just watched the thing about this. The guy who did it, he worked on Star Wars and stuff. The creature creator worked with Stan Winston and stuff.
Which is a dying art.
Yeah, I really love to see every stop motion feature that comes out. Just like, please keep making those because I love them.
Yeah. You mean hand drawn stuff?
That as well. I mean,
Oh, okay.
like claymation, but
Claymation.
also hand drawn. I'll put that in there too.
Yeah, that's a dying thing. I met a guy in the painting workshop thing I went down to in Red Lodge, and he kind of specializes in doing hand drawn, frame by frame stuff. Just like very hard to find people that even know how to do it anymore. And programs that work well with it. Anything else, it's really going away pretty fast.
It's just not viable because it's like takes so long. You have to really like be into it, love it.
Yeah, or like we have like where Disney and them just had a whole warehouse of guys drawing each frame.
Except they outsource it to Korea now, I think.
Yeah, well, that's really what they'll have to do because those are the only guys that can draw anymore, are a lot of the Chinese and things like that study differently.
They just do the keyframes or whatever.
I think that looks depressing enough. It's good for
Yeah.
Valentine's Day.
Yep.
I
Post it.
think let's talk about animation. Miyazaki's still doing stuff.
Yeah.
I just tried watching his first movie. It was about a panda. It started go panda, go panda, go panda, and it was odd. I prefer his later work,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen all of them. I need to. I don't know where to watch. Like, how do you get old movies?
I know.
You,
Yeah.
Blockbuster.
It's hard to. I feel like Netflix is kind of falling down. Classic movies. Like I search for classic movies on Netflix. I'm like, come on, you guys should have this.
Let's try to watch Ace Ventura. Can you find it?
Oh, I just
Classic
got it
movie.
in my
Yeah, I
notes.
guess that's classic
Fun.
90s.
Wait, you have it?
Yeah.
Ace
I
Ventura?
brought it here like last week.
nice.
Yeah, we're gonna watch that sometime. I don't know if we have a working VHS player is the next problem.
Right.
I got one in my cabin. Gotta come over so we can watch Guys and Dolls, Morgan.
Oh yeah.
Our 8th grade production of Guys and Dolls.
Fun times. Saying, sit down, you're rocking the boat.
How can I rearrange these to something interesting? Actually, probably grab my other roses. See what I can do. So.
What's that? What's the canvas you're using? Canvas? It's just
It's a
paper?
hot press watercolor paper, and I think that's fairly common for gouache, but I don't know. I don't even know if you can really study gouache anywhere. James Gurney is a really awesome artist and designer. I mean, he created the whole Dinotopia series.
Oh yeah, I love Dinotopia.
Yeah, and he is like just
He's
super.
He's a gouache artist?
Well, he uses watercolor, but he'll use gouache also, and like he's also super open about his information, his process, all the techniques he knows. Like he has a blog. It's called the Gurney Journey,
Cool.
and it is such a great resource. Every artist really should check it out. But that'll be nice and depressing too. Let's see if I can pull that off. Anyway, he talks about some of those he does a lot of research into what he's using and why. And I wish he had one on gouache because his watercolor one is really in depth and really gave me a more solid foundation of what I was going to do for watercolor. But I just generally think I like gouache more from the color standpoint. I feel like watercolor, I just have such a hard time getting the saturation I want. And I'm going to try it with gouache, but I might have to take a workshop or something to see if I can get more clean information about it because there's not a lot online that I've found.
Yeah.
Could you go over the top of the watercolor with gouache and kind of like mix it together?
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, they're both water media, so it's not too big of a deal. It's more just keeping it all from being a big mess. Just trying to, like, right now I've got my palette I'm using that's just got these colors on it. These are all gouache. And to add watercolor, I would just be adding more potentially confusing things to it. So this is already kind of, I don't know if these are the colors I want to use or if I should be using them.
Dinotopia, by the way, for those unfortunate enough not to have seen it, is about a ship or a shipwrecked sailor washes ashore an uncharted island where dinosaurs and man live in harmony, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Some
beautiful.
of the best illustration that I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's so
by
killer.
far. And cool story too.
Oh, it's like written.
Plus dinosaurs.
Yeah. It's written like through a journal.
Journal,
style.
first person.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you should see his Instagram. He posts some of the processes he goes through to make the paintings because they're all amazing, and
Really?
he creates dioramas and models and takes photographs of them and lights them according to how he wants to. He builds little dinosaurs. He pre-textures his canvases with the scales and stuff on them. It's just
Whoa.
it's just to see what he's doing and how he makes them is like as cool as what he ends up with in the end. So check it out on
What's the
Instagram.
guy's name?
James Gurney.
James Green.
And as far as his Instagram handle, I think is probably James Gurney. It might be Gurney Journey though. I'd have to look at my phone and figure it out. But yeah, then the blog is called Gurney Journey and it's great. It's got so much information.
I'll check it out.
It's like a little art school. Let's see if I can't make it really dark rose.
And you're using hot press watercolor paper, which is it's cheaper than cold press, or it's just a different process.
The process is different how they make
Obviously,
them,
But
which I think has a lot to do with the smoothness.
Right.
So hot press becomes more smooth, whereas cold press becomes more rough.
more tooth to it.
You might know more of this. You've done more watercolor than I have,
I
but
don't.
let me look at my other because I do have my actual watercolor pad over here.
More tooth to it, you say?
Yes.
That's the term.
The
For-
tooth
for
is
rough?
like the bumps, yeah, they're rough, and that means that more of the texture kind of shows up in the painting, which can be really cool.
Yeah, it's like this is a hot press finish, and the how much weight I'll always have this is 140 pound,
Right.
which and I don't know at least if I knew more of the materials.
It's about medium. I think 300 pound is like the next.
Yeah,
step
they
up,
can make
and that's
stuff
super
that's
good.
really, really smooth. And this isn't super smooth, but it's not rough either. So you can see in this, like, the cover of this is almost like a watercolor paper that's, like, that's the tooth. And this is
That's
really,
the tooth right there.
this is not tooth either.
Gospel tooth.
And I prefer smoother paper, but I think if it was really smooth, you'd lose control maybe. I don't know. I need to experiment with the papers. I don't like the very rough stuff, though, because I like to have a little bit of control. And then the bumps make it hard for me to
A little rough too. It's gotta be a little rough.
Alright. I don't know if I can go anymore on this without
Yeah.
ruining it.
Let's see it.
Stop.
Can you hold it up to the camera?
So you might, if I
Nice.
turn it, you might be able to see
There
a
you
little
go.
shimmering.
Cool.
That's about it.
Reads well.
Read from back there.
Mm-hmm.
It's an important thing. Far away.
Takes me back to
Summer. All that
last
smoke.
summer. Yeah, bad lungs,
Yeah.
sore throat.
That's one thing about with this medium that I was talking about. It gives me. I have to use open windows and just use it sparingly or take breaks because it's kind of toxic.
The turpentine.
The turpentine, yeah. Which
And Lauren, do you use medium too sometimes
Yeah.
like that?
I've been using like I do a mixture kind of like that with like Gamsol, an oil sometimes, walnuts. I have a couple different kind of
Walnut
oils, and then I do a copal resin.
what's
What's up?
It's like it comes from a pine tree. I don't remember where I picked. Oh, I don't know where I picked it up, but I forget. But I've just been using that, and also Galkid.
I've never used that.
Galkid's a slow dryer, right? It slows down the drying process.
There's one that's a slow dryer, and then there's one that speeds up drying.
Oh, okay.
All these words sound like Lord of the Rings characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Rob Akey was talking about using the Galclid that. I think the one that he had dries quicker.
Yeah.
Maybe it was one of the two, but yeah, he used that. I never.
Anyway, Alkids were quick drying things. Like you can buy like pre-made Alkid colors that are fast drying oil paint, but I didn't know if it was an Alkid Galkid thing or if it was just a totally different chemical.
It can get like sticky, which I like it makes it kind of stringy.
Huh.
And then
For texture.
yeah.
Cool.
I'm trying to think. You Richie use turpentine or
Yeah,
Gamsol?
turpentine. Because turpentines should be just distilled from pine tree resin, and I think there might be a certain kind of pine tree, but it also is apparently a medicinal substance. So it's actually, if it's pure, it shouldn't be bad for you. I've heard of people actually taking it. Do not take it. I'm not saying that, but
Legal disclaimer.
I've done a bit of research on it, and it shouldn't be harmful. The thing is, it evaporates really quick compared to Gamsol or something, so it does go into the air, and I think that is bad to take too much in. But it also, I don't know if Gamsol will even dissolve the linseed oil or the stand oil, because it doesn't have the same qualities as the oil. So the turpentine will dissolve in a medium, so that's why I had to use it, because we did it one time and it just kind of stayed this gelatinous linseed oil thing, and it didn't actually mix together. So
I've never used like hardware store stuff.
Huh.
It's-
Yeah.
I just feel like it's too powerful or something.
Right.
Maybe I should.
Yeah,
I just lied that
Maybe
clean
it might
easy.
break it down, the layers and
you
everything.
can lie.
But I guess not.
What are you working on right now, Lauren?
Got some paintings in the studio. I've been doing studies like all week, kind of to prepare myself.
Figurative? Or?
No, I have. I'm doing a series of these really big paintings of these pictures I took when I did a
Oh, the
like
from
a
above?
helicopter thing. Yeah, in Glacier.
Cool.
So I'm gonna do that. And I have
Imagine
a couple
the
of,
detail that's required to
Yeah.
go into that.
Those are gonna look so cool though.
Yeah.
so I've been doing
Exciting.
like studies of, cause like the layering process is kind of, it's hard to predict. So with something really large,
Mm-hmm. How big are you working?
5x4.
Whoa.
Yeah, Lauren's got some huge canvases going.
Macro.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, awesome. I like how that's coming together.
It's
Ken,
good.
that's neato.
Is it looking alright?
It looks.
So in fact, you work efficiently, then you can, like, I think really get somewhere fast with this medium. Where if that was just oil paint, people would just say it's not finished. And I think watercolors and the modern mediums, even if they're super simply stated, they almost look more finished than if
Better,
people sit
yeah.
there and noodle it. So this will be, I guess, the challenge if I can start working more efficiently. And good oil painters were usually good watercolors. Like John Singer Sargent is probably the clear example. Andrew Zorn is another one. They are extremely prolific in everything they do, but that includes water medium. So I'm gonna try to figure it out. But that's looking simple enough. I just want to add a little more definition to the rose part, but
Yeah, a little
they look dead.
shadow.
They look dead still, right?
Yeah.
Poke it with sticks, you get some moves.
Stick a fork in it. Alright, thanks guys. Well, I think we'll call it for this week. This was brought to you by Heart of the West Art Show going on at the Bozeman Best Western Plus Grand Tree Inn, August 11th through 13th. 11th through 13th, 2016. And yeah, in Bozeman, Montana, and then the Coeur d'Alene Heart of the West Art Show at the Coeur d'Alene Resort in Idaho, September 1st through 4th, 2016. Hope to see you there. Ken and Richie will be there, so
Oh yeah.
it's gonna be a fun time. And thanks, Lauren and Dan. And we'll see you guys in 3 weeks when Richie and Ken are just about to go off to the
Don't say that.
Western Art Week in Great Falls. to exhibit their work at the Out West Art Show, 16th through the 19th of March.
Yep. You nailed it.
We're already ready. Every painting's already done.
Very set,
Yep.
all loaded up.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Basically just waiting.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.